Conference podcast. My name is Jonathan Williamson. I'm going to host it for the next 30, 40-ish minutes or so. I am the co-founder of CG Cookie, Blender Market, etc. Today, my main focus running is Blender Market. That's basically my day in, day out job at this point in time. I've been using Blender now, I think since 2003, nearing in on 20 some years. And today I have a couple of guests with me. So really what I wanted to talk about today at the conference, particularly as the Blender conference, the Blender community, everything has grown so much over the last few years. I think really starting in, 2018, 2019, the Blender community has just exploded in every way, in great ways. And we're really starting to see like a real ecosystem around Blender. Professionally, creatively, etc., from almost every industry out there. And so what I really actually wanted to chat with these guys about that are all here with me today is Blender products and how those Blender products basically create a livelihood for them and how they came about, how they, started their products, what are they working on today, and just all things around building professional Blender products as a business, as a sustainable source of income. So I'm going to start on my left. So on my left is Richard Traynor and Zach Easton of TrueVFX. So why don't you guys just give you, quick little blurb about who you are, how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So Richard Traynor from the UK. We started TrueVFX like 3 or 4 years ago. Was it 3 years ago, something?
2.
You joined 2 years ago.
I joined 2 years ago.
Yeah,
you're right. You started.
Started doing products and I think I was starting Blender 2015, 16, and then we accidentally got here, and that's it.
Yeah.
Completely by accident.
Total accident. Yeah.
Tripped into it. Yeah.
It works out that way sometimes.
Sometimes.
And
I think it's because you're such talented chaps.
We tripped.
I was going to say, I don't think it was completely by accident. It may have been a surprise, but probably not by accident.
Yeah.
And Zach?
So I'm Zach Easton. I started using Blender in high school in 2008, so 2.47. And I used it through college, even though they really wanted me to use Lightwave. We escaped that. But so I used Blender in that, and I used Blender professionally. And then due to COVID, I was forced to do some other stuff, and then here we are with TrueVFX. The other stuff was TrueVFX, and here we are. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, so then on my right, we've got Adam and Martin Preisler. You guys are brothers, correct? Yes, of Polygonic. Adam, why don't you start?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Adam. I studied architecture, and I'm one of the co-founders of a company Polygonic. We do like asset type add-ons and also like one render manager that actually helps us the most, even though maybe it's not that popular. But I started with 3D when I was quite young. I started with 3ds Max 6, the trial version. It lasted 30 days. Those were the days when it was actually still discrete. It wasn't Autodesk yet. And then when that trial ended, I had to move on to 3ds Max 5, then 3ds Max 4. And then I asked my brother, who's actually 3 years older than me, and I asked him, so what software should I use? I want to do 3D. This is so much fun. And he told me Milkshape. I think that was one of the popular modeling softwares back then, and also Wings 3D.
Yep.
And I think Lightwave was around, but that was actually, I think, paid. And Cinema, I'm not sure, but one of those softwares was actually Blender. And so I installed the version. I think the first version was 2.36. It was released in April 2004. It was the first version I used. I remember there was a carrot, with forks or something. That was the splash screen. And I was hooked. I was modeling mostly fantasy cities because we wanted to create this massive MMORPG game, very ambitious. But we learned a lot. And I went on to study architecture, then do visualizations in London. Then I came back in 2018 to Czech Republic, and we founded the company together with my brother. And next year, we found one more partner. His name is Jan Vopička, and he started Botanic together with me. And I think most of you who are listening probably know Botanic from us. That's the bestseller, but we really try our best to do other things pretty well. And Materialic was actually the first product.
Martin, how did you come about to come around to the Blender side?
So you've all been saying how you've been using Blender for a while, and I've also been using Blender, but in a very different way. I still cannot click around Blender to make any models, but I usually use like the Python console. I've been using it for a long time on the scripting side. And as Adam was saying, we founded Polygonic in 2018. Initially, we created these products just to help our like ArchViz and VFX business, but over time, it became the main source of income for us. Like these time-saving asset add-ons to create scenes.
I think that's a pretty common route that a lot of people have found themselves in. You know, ultimately you create a tool because you need it yourself and it's useful. You have a problem that you're trying to solve or something that's monotonous and you're constantly trying to make it faster or, you know, be able to be more efficient in your own work. And then you discover that, oh, this is actually useful for other people too. Yeah. And it's a very common way to create products. I think probably in the Blender community, at least for Blender Market, you know, I can't speak for the entire ecosystem, but I think we would say that early on, the vast majority of products were exactly that. It was people that had created something for themselves, and then other people were interested in it. And I think you know it's a great way to come about because it's so organic and it's necessary. Or it's not necessary, but it's natural. You know, one of the things that happens so often is you see people like really just trying to create a product. They're trying to, you know, they're just reaching for ideas like, oh, I can sell this, or I can do this, or I can do that. But ultimately, solve your own problems.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, was that the case for you guys?
Essentially, yeah. Like, True Terrain came around because I needed to finish some really long animations in university for my final year, and that's how I ended up making the initial version. There's actually still a free version of it on Blend Swap. I say this all the time.
0.1.
Yeah, it's still there. And that's how that one came about. And then going forward, when we started growing a community, it was more like, what problems do you want solving? And less about the problems that we were solving. And I think that's the natural course of things. Yeah. Usually.
So, you know, one of the questions that I really wanted to ask both of you, and I say both of you, I mean both of you as groups, as businesses, as partners, etc., is what was the transition like, and how long did it take when you realized that suddenly your product business was your livelihood suddenly? You know, like, I think it sounds like for all of you, and I know this was the case for my own products before we launched Blender Market, and then even launching Blender Market, you know, it was a bit of a road before it was actually the core of our livelihoods of, you know, making an income off of it that we could actually pay our bills and things like that. So why don't I start with Polygonic? How long did it take you guys before, you know, you said you were doing architectural visualization and doing a lot of client work, and then at one point that was no longer the focus?
Yeah, actually, just to clarify, back then, in 2018, it was just me, and we weren't doing that much client work. I was doing visualizations in London in a studio. I hope I can mention them. It's called Asymmetrica Ltd. And it's got like this amazing CEO, and the people are great. I really loved spending my time there. Of course, I had to work in 3ds Max and use Corona renderer, which, after the year 2020, just like the name sort of rings differently. But I still love the renderer. It's amazing, actually. And I think Cycles is like with every month, every year, it's coming closer. And in some ways, it's even exceeding what Corona can do. Because, for example, the viewport denoising, like I don't know if they've managed to finish that, but or like the overlays in Blender. Like Blender gives all of this sort of just through the sheer power of really rapid development. But I had a different point actually. I sort of got into this, I think it was when we released Botanic. Yeah. And we found out that we can actually make a decent amount of money with doing these. But what I also wanted to mention is that back then I actually had some models already because I was modeling a lot of stuff. I had like the Barcelona chair on the Blender Market. I had like a fireplace scene and a couple of other products I don't even remember.
I realized that was you guys.
Yeah,
I remember those. They were some of the super early ones.
They were actually quite good, but there were no rules like for me. And when I submitted them, like Matthew was sending me a message like, well, it's great. It's a really nice model. I like it, but could you just put it in a group? Back then they were called groups, you know, it wasn't collections. And he was like telling me like, this the model is really nice. You know, you've got all these parts, you've got all these like nuts and screws, and it's all like a different object, which actually, when I look at it today, I'm like, well, man, it's just a chair. Just it can be like just one object, and that's fine. But like what I found out is that they don't sell that well, because of course, like why would you, why would you like buy a chair model for $9? Like today, you can actually get subscriptions to services like BlenderKit, which just give you so much for like half of the money for like 1 month. But whatever, I mean, it's an amazing service. So I think after Botanic, it happened. We were like, yes, this makes sense. And
pretty quick.
That's actually also coincidentally, sort of course, like since we made some money, we could hire some people and we could grow the business and just put more effort in. I think Martin can maybe.
Yeah, it's a snowball really, because like people have to start trusting you and buy products from you. I remember with Materialic, it was kind of frustrating for us because the growth was very slow. And it was a project, like we invested a lot of effort. Adam mostly invested a lot of effort into that, and I wrote the code, and it took a long time before people started buying it and trusting us. I think with Botanic it was easier because there already was some trust with the Materialic, and like with future products we build this, like, I guess, trust of our customers, so it gets a little bit easier. And also Adam was saying about the models, about the early days. Like for me, the early days was, I noticed that Adam was doing a lot of repetitive work on his ArchViz, and he would like click around and just reparent something, like do really menial work to just organize something in a way so he could render it. And I wrote some like really crude and bad scripts to help
that
with
was
that.
I can actually explain more. That was when I was doing the massive. We actually had it yesterday at our booth. The VR project from Los Angeles. It's like 8-story building, entirely done in Blender. 2,800 objects, 7.5 million triangles, and like, I don't know, 200 materials, man. And I had to do all of those in Unreal. Like, I did them in Blender, but then like the problem was that Datasmith was not actually, like, it came even years later, you know, it's a plugin that you can use for 3ds Max that converts materials to Unreal Engine correctly. Like, it can actually take like V-Ray materials and it can convert them so that they work in Unreal. They sort of work. So I created the library twice, and but the problem was later that when you're building the light for the light maps in the entire building, for it to work in virtual reality and to get like the 90 FPS, you need good light maps. UV Packmaster helped with that. But another problem was that there was a bug that when the scale of the objects was small, because Blender is based on meters, which makes complete sense, but Unreal is based on centimeters. So there was a lot of problems with the scale. You can't just have like 0.01, like scale it down or up. Right. It just doesn't compute correctly. Like the light, I had so many bugs. So I had to go through like 2,800 objects and like correct the scale. But fortunately, Martin here, he created this guy. I told him like, I need to do this for every object. And he was like, okay, so this.
Well, and I mean, ultimately, that's where scripting comes in so well. It's your ability to automate things, and that's actually one of the questions. Actually, I'm going to just turn it around a little bit to you guys. Yeah. So, obviously, like we've already touched on, building trust in customers, giving people a reason to buy your products. There's a fine line between a high quality product and, for all intents and purposes, a cash grab. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of those things that people always are concerned about, or at least, it gets vocalized a lot in the community. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably a little overblown, but, Blender being open source has a very strong free community behind it. And the many definitions of free do get convoluted, but how have you guys found, earlier, and I apologize, I don't remember who mentioned it, but building trust in customers. Yeah. Like, what approach have you guys taken to, in this case, for anybody that's just listening that can't see the video stream, I'm talking to Zach and Richard of True VFX now. How have you guys gone about building that trust? Deploying your products and knowing that, you're going to get a lot of pushback sometimes.
Yeah. I think the best way to build trust is to accept that the things that you think aren't always the right things, and accept that, as cheesy and cliche as it is, sometimes the customer is right, or like the end user is right, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are using it. So they give you feedback about something, no matter how bitter it might taste, you kind of have to accept that and go, it was a cool idea for us, not for them. And then working on the things that they ask for in a timely manner. And even if you can't do it in a timely manner, it's sort of earmarking it and letting people know, we're going to do this, we're going to work on it, we've listened to you, just give us some time. That's one good way to build trust, I think.
I mean, because ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, when you're building products, you know, sometimes the thought of a Blender product can probably be a little bit misleading, but ultimately, all you guys are all doing is allowing people to do their work faster, to do more things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And, you know, I may be stepping out of bounds here, but I would assume that for each of you, the goal is to allow people to work more efficiently, do more work, and that it's targeted at professionals. It's people that are trying to make a living with Blender, doing contract work, et cetera. And in that case, you know, time is money, and that's incredibly valuable.
Definitely.
Trying to keep an eye on the chat a little bit. So what has been for each of you? I'll start with True VFX. What's been the most challenging part of launching Blender products? You know, whether that's support, whether that's, you know, community attitudes, whatever it's been in the last couple of years. What is the worst friction point, the most challenging thing to deal with each day?
That's a tough one.
Each day, I'm not so sure about, but yeah, releasing it, it's usually getting it in front of people. We have a great community, and our community really supports us really well, and we're very grateful for them. And we try to help them with Discord and whatnot like that. But getting outside of them, sometimes it's difficult because a lot of Blender users know Blender Market, but outside of that, sometimes reaching that audience is difficult. Yeah, I would say that's mainly outside of our own audience. Yeah, outside of our own community, reaching the people we haven't yet.
Well, and I mean, you know, that right there is a whole discussion that goes way beyond even products or anything. And ultimately, it's a key thing to hit on, though. Like, audience is central to everything. You know, if you are trying to make a livelihood around Blender, your audience is everything. You know, regardless of whether you're doing freelance work, you're, you know, an audience of people that are aware of the work that you do, the services that you offer. If you're selling products, getting that in front of people is really hard. And, like, you know, for you guys on the Polygonic side, that's exactly the same. You know, you have to reach your audience, to build the products for the people that you're trying to reach, to prove to them that it's useful. Like, how have you guys gone about doing that? To, you know, it helps you have an audience now, and you can leverage that audience that you have. But how'd you build that audience to begin with?
Yeah, I think we built it mainly with Botanic, obviously. But then we've added the other products. But for me, like, if I can answer the same question, for me, the hardest part is exactly the same, I think. It's like, I would love to just do what I love doing and what I do well. Almost like Greg Zal was saying in his presentation a while ago. And just like not care about marketing or getting money every month.
The dream?
Paying the dreams and doing the bureaucracy and then sorting out the invoices, and then there's a problem and you have to solve it. And then it's just, that's just so much. I would just love to just work and I'm actually.
Do you find that the ability, you know, setting aside obviously the, you know, the bureaucratic aspects of business, the paperwork, et cetera, that unfortunately just comes with the territory. Do you find that as your businesses have grown, and I'll, you know, turn to you guys first for Polygonic, and then I'm curious of the same question for True VFX, have you found that has gotten easier? You know, is it easier to focus on the things that you really enjoy working on now as you've gotten more established, you have a loyal following, you've got a good customer base, or is that always just that, you know, it's the next goal, it's the next goal, it's the next thing, like it's always just out of reach?
I think some things get easier, but you just get more bureaucracy and like more organization. And like also maybe this is more related to like actually releasing products than the business side. But when we make releases, we would make a mistake, and then we'd be very anxious not to make the mistake again. So we would change the process, like incorporate something that tells us, oh, this texture is missing, like fix it before you release it. And then we would make another mistake, so we would again fix it and like make something that tells us that it's wrong. And like over time, we built this like huge machine that's so complicated now. But I mean, I guess it's anxiety of like missing something, and then it wouldn't work for people, which over time, I guess, would erode the trust of customers.
I mean, because ultimately, you're building things for your customers, and even though that hopefully those things align with the things that you really enjoy building, the things that you want to do, the unfortunate reality is that's not always the case. And like any business, like any individual, we've got bills to pay, and making that balance is hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think to a degree, like you can stay within sort of like a bubble of what you are willing to do, and also what you like to do. Like there are certain things that, like products wise, we probably just wouldn't step into because it's not our wheelhouse. Sure. And there are already well established people out there, creators out there who just know what they're doing better than us. So we do to a degree get to still do what we want to do. But when it comes down to like the day to day, I think that never kind of lays off. Because as some things get easier, you need to pick up new things. And it just becomes, I think it's just part and parcel of like running a business as it scales.
And one other thing I found, especially as we have a bigger audience, we have this community that we love and we want to interact with. But then we also have to code. We have to get things done. And so like we have these people who come in and they want support. And sometimes it can take an hour or two just because they have a complicated issue or it's a bug or something we're not sure about. And so trying to leverage that on a day-to-day basis without going crazy because you're switching too fast.
How has that experience been for each of you as far as, you each now have full teams behind you. It's not just the two of each of you behind everything. You've got employees now. You've got a full team. What's that process been like? Like, did you guys each set out to build a business, or did that just come about organically and suddenly you found yourself having a business? I mean, I know, like for me personally, thinking back to the early CG Cookie days, I mean, it was mostly by accident. Wes Burke, my partner, and I, we didn't set out to build a business. We just started doing tutorials, and then one thing led to the next, and lo and behold, we have a business.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what happened, because we were like just fooling around doing some stuff that we enjoyed, and then I had to bring it up, but like the pandemic happened, and then priorities shifted, and you sort of have to rely on yourself a little bit more, and you go, right, okay, so what are we doing now? Can't rely on the company that I was employed with, so how do we do this? And then it all shifts, and you go, right, okay, I've now got bigger priorities. I've got a community that I need to support, and now it is a business now. Now we have a business, kind of by accident, and you don't set out to do this, and you've got no business acumen, and you don't really know how to run anything. And a lot of the time, it's a lot of friction for you and like your users too, because they're having to deal with the fact that you don't know how to handle support in the volumes that it comes in, and you don't know how to optimize your workflows for helping them. And that as much as it's our business, it's also like the people that joined us along the way, the community, like they helped grow us, and we wouldn't be here without them, and like their input has helped shape the business as it is.
Yeah. Was that the same for you guys? Like, did it come about organically, or was it more intentional?
Yeah. I had some time to think. I think I've got like an advantage over you guys. We have. Like,
Let's hear it.
Yes, please tell.
I think we wanted to have a business. Like at first, like when we were young, as I was saying, we were doing this video game, which of course never could become reality. It was too ambitious, and we actually had to do everything ourselves. Because Unreal Engine and Unity, I don't think even existed, maybe, or definitely it wasn't free like it is today, and so on. So at first, we wanted to create a business to do actually video games in the future. Like that's what we'd like to derail part of our business once we get really established and once we're comfortable in the position. So the funny thing is, even though we wanted to do that, the first employee, who's actually Karol Schwartz, he's an artist and architect too. He likes to call himself the first employee, but I'm actually the first employee. So he's like the second employee. But the funny thing was, when he was coming to the office, every day at first, I sort of didn't know what to tell him. What should he do? It was
right.
But that's the thing that the company is you need to have a plan. And it took me a while before I realized oh my god, I need to really come up with something, because otherwise this doesn't make sense. And somehow we did it. And today Karol is a pillar in Polygonics, the entire the cogwheel, the entire machine sort of. And I think what I would like to also say, jokes aside a bit, that the hardest part about having like bigger teams is the organization, of course, because you need to be efficient, you need to communicate
It is
properly,
very difficult.
and you need to log issues, you need to have conversations, you need to have a lot of meetings, like
To trust each other.
yeah, and also of course to trust each other, but sometimes to forgive each other because like we don't do anything usually like on purpose, of course, but sometimes someone like screws up a bit,
Right.
you know.
Well, I think
and,
it's pretty common, I would say, for people that find themselves starting businesses, but also people that come on to a business early on, et cetera. Like typically, all of those people are quite passionate, and those passions, those ideas, opinions don't always necessarily align, and that can lead to a lot of friction. And like you alluded to, building the organization that is the business, that's what it is, that's what a business is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And some people come about it more naturally than others. I know I do not. It's something that I've never come easy to. I'm fortunate to have everybody that's on the team be very capable of not having a lot of direction, because I am horrible at providing direction. There will be times that I realize like, oh, I haven't talked to this person that is, directly reporting to me
For like a
in
week.
months even sometimes. And, thankfully everybody is, they understand what they're working on, and we're all aligned in that most of the time, but it's hard. It really is. Okay, so I'm going to change tack now.
Okay.
And I want to talk about something that obviously is, I guarantee you guys have talked about it before. You've probably gotten pushback from it before. And it's kind of the elephant in the room when we're talking about commercial products around Blender. Blender, of course, as everybody in this room is well aware, is free and open source. How has the experience been? I'll start with Polygonic, around the response, the support, etc. Support as in like encouragement, not customer support, around making commercial products built on an open source platform.
I think since our products help like Blender professionals make money, for our core audience, like it's not such a big deal to pay. And like we've even had, you have this weird experience where we put out coupons that we have a sale, and they go buy our product, and it's right there on the product page, so they must see it, and yet they buy it without the coupon.
biggest letters
So this is a pretty core group for our revenue, is professionals. They want to make scenes like as quickly as possible with high quality. We've also had some pushback, like some people believe that we should give away the products for free because Blender is free. Like in the end, we reinvest this revenue into the products, so we just have to have some model where we can continue working on the products, and this is the best we could figure out. Also, like some of the people who are supporting us from the beginning, they bought some of these products like really cheap, and we continue giving updates. And I think this was a really big reason why we got successful, because people keep messaging us like, I can't believe you're still updating this after so many years. And it's like so much bigger now and so much more expensive. So some people even treat it as like an investment,
right?
I guess, because they like buy something early on and then it gets updated.
Yes, but regarding that, we've actually lately realized that it's not sustainable. So we'll have to think about something. We're not sure right now, but if we'd like to do really cool stuff for the Blender community, like 5 years or from now, or even more, like I don't know how long I'll live. So
hopefully how long am I?
yeah, definitely longer than that, I hope.
Have a bit of faith.
We'll just have to come up with something, like how to make it sustainable. Because of course, like Blender right now, there's a massive boom of user, like the numbers are rising and so on. But just with the stock market, it just can't rise forever.
Right.
Yeah, and eventually the market, Blender user base will be like saturated, and you can have just so many people interested in 3D in the world. Like no more people. So then you can't really sell most of those people licenses and then just keep updating it like, Botanic in 2014. Who knows what it's going to be?
Well, and I think, one of the points that gets missed a little bit when we talk about products early on and selling a Blender creation of any kind is, what are you paying for? And the reality I think that you guys have probably realized is that when you sell, in this case, specifically software products. Assets are a little different, but software products in particular, you're not selling the initial product. I mean, obviously that's a component of it. You're selling the ongoing commitment to maintain it, to support it, and fundamentally we're all building GPL software. It's all open. Anybody can take it. They can modify it. They can redistribute it, et cetera. And ultimately, when a customer pays you for your product, like that's a commitment to fix it, to continue developing it and whatnot. Like how have you guys handled that for the true VFX side? For any pushback, any responses, or how do you personally balance that?
Yeah, we've had some pushback, but the overwhelming response from our community is a lot of time it's very similar. It's like, you're still doing this for free, or like you're still giving us updates for free. And people are always grateful that we're doing it, but at the same time, we do have quite a few people that are like, I understand, like you've promised this, but they're like, we've had a lot of encouragement from our community to like, it makes sense why you would charge more for this. That you would charge, keep going. And we've really appreciate that. We haven't done it yet, but we're in the same boat. We have users who bought a product for $30 that's now worth $100. It's because of all the products and the features and that we've put into it. And they didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the natural way of things. And so I think we're looking into very similar things. And but the community's been great. And they've been, most of the time, it's usually they fully understand and fully like, yes, we think you guys should keep going. Because like you said, we put the money right back into our stuff. It's not going in our pockets, buying us mansions or buying us. It goes into support for lots of other stuff. And we're on our Discord almost 24/7 now. And so,
well, and without that revenue stream for each of you wouldn't be able to keep building it and making them better and creating more assets and continuing to release things.
And it makes more sense.
When you said like from $30 to $100, the product went, what I wanted to say is actually we would all prefer it the other way around. You can sell it for a lot of money and then eventually it'll be free, right? Like that's the dream. But that's why it's not fair. Actually, to just raise the price of the product. We've been doing this well. We've been guilty as well of this.
And usually when we like release a new tier or something like that, people are like, "Oh yeah, you're just trying to do a cash grab. You're just trying to get more money." I mean, not to like beat around the bush, but to some degree, yeah, like we need that income, but because we're going to put it back and make the product better. We do want to make more stuff.
Yeah.
I think the like buy once and like have future updates for free is really good when it's a hobbyist, because a hobbyist has something else that's supporting them. Yeah. Honestly, they have another source of income and they're just doing this in their free time because they love it. And usually because almost like they're doing it for themselves anyways. And so when it becomes our actual income, what actually supports us, if we don't make more money, if we're not supported, then the tool eventually goes away because Blender is changing much faster sometimes than our products are. And
I mean, that actually brings me back to literally why, in this case, Blender Market exists, but frankly, why any commercial ecosystem around open source software exists. So I don't know how much people know, but like the reason that we started Blender Market back in 2014 was what you just said, which was that without a sustained source of support, in this case, financial support, add-ons, which at the time, Blender products didn't really exist. At this point, it's synonymous to say a product, add-on, you name it. Not to say that all products are add-ons, but for the sake of this discussion, the only things that existed at the time were scripts and plugins that people would distribute for free, and that was great. But Blender development, even back then, in this case, I'm talking like 2012, 2013, et cetera, Blender development moved so fast that within one version, for the most part, most of your scripts and add-ons would break. And invariably what happened is everybody would just be releasing these for free, which was awesome. And then they'd get busy. They had lives. They had jobs. They, their job was not building these plugins. It was doing something else. And so I personally got really frustrated where like, I can't rely on these in my production pipeline because I was freelancing at the time. Like I can't rely on these tools if they're going to break every couple of months and there's nobody actively maintaining them. So let's sell it. Like let's sell a tool. The point is not to make money off the tool inherently. The point is to be able to keep working on the tool, to afford to not be working on another job, to do those completely. And that was the original reason for Blender Market to exist. And I think that that's still true to this day. That if you're going to keep working on the tool, like on all of your products, but even particularly like your guys' products on Polygonic, like they're extensive. You know, there's thousands and thousands of hours of work in those products. Like that doesn't happen out of goodwill and free time. You know, I imagine you both have families, and you guys have families and whatnot. Like you've got bills to pay, rent to pay. You can either do it as a hobby and release something and hope that people enjoy it, and maybe they'll continue to work on it, or you can really make a commitment to keep building it, and that takes revenue. And, you know, regardless of how you generate that revenue, there's obviously lots of ways to do it. You know, actually the talk that just happened right before here at the Blender conference is probably one of the most relevant talks to this discussion, I think, which is Greg Zoll of Polyhaven talking about free product or free assets as a business model and how he's done that. And it's cool because it's a different way, but it's just as sustainable. But it has the exact same issue. Like, hey, we want to create all these things. We want to make all these free assets available to people. But somebody's got to, you know, revenue has to come from somewhere. And revenue, not in the case of the business, but literally in the financial sense of paying for your own needs.
I'm going to have to go. I apologize.
Zach, really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you all.
Since we've got an extra mic, Martin, if you want to move around, by all means. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
All right. Well, as we're getting resituated here real quick, I'm going to actually turn it around now and let whoever raises their hand first. What's been the most unique experience? Like, what was the thing that you didn't expect with, you know, building a business around Blender? You know, and whether it's products or people.
I think it was that someone will request a refund on a $10 product to buy food. Yeah, we received a message like that. But,
We that's a weird one. I don't know.
It's a little it's obscure, but
a lot of so a lot of students. That was a weird one for us because we were never taught like Blender was not like a part of a curriculum. So when we get a lot of students contacting us going, yeah, I'm a student and I use Blender, that was a shocking figure of, I didn't expect it to be that many students using Blender.
There's a lot of students using Blender.
Yeah, I'm actually teaching like 24 of them at Prague.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every week.
So how does that relate, if at all, to your day-to-day work?
Well, every Wednesday evening, I just go to the subway and I go to the faculty. Sometimes I come like 1 hour later. That happened this week. I mean, just so much stuff to do, and I forgot. But the lesson was amazing. Yeah.
Good.
So for this lesson, I actually gave them a real project, and we were setting up the materials, like so they didn't have to model anything or prepare anything. And it's really nice to have the entire class use one model. Everything is very consistent, you know. And what's really interesting is you can see how everyone does something different with it.
Maybe related to this, one thing I did not expect is, like, we know that we have professionals who are willing to pay a lot of money and get a lot of the assets and get all the functionality, but we also try to make it affordable for the hobbyists. So we make like light versions or smaller versions. But in practice, nobody wants the light versions. Like everybody wants the full versions.
Even though they're really useful.
Yeah, like even for people where, like, I don't think they're, like, I don't actually know how many trees we ship in Botanic, but it's something ridiculous. But if you buy Botanic Light and you're not a professional, like, there's no chance you're going to go through all of it.
Yeah.
Like, yet people, when they look at the product page, they never want the light. And actually, this is something we still struggle with, where, like, nobody wants the cheaper versions.
It's even related to what I was saying with the students, because I actually gave them the light versions, because they're students. And I was like, oh, so this is Botanic Light. Wow. There's so much stuff. Okay, so let's pick a tree, you know, and it was just full. I was like, why would I even need more? But yes, people naturally, they like the best often.
Like it's something to aspire to, you know. You know, nobody wants to use the demo version. They want to use the professional version. They want to.
But the upgrade process now on Blender Market, like it was made even easier.
It used to be so painful.
It used to be very painful. But I think maybe the users don't realize that upgrading now is so easy. Like you can actually go for the free version.
I mean, ideally, we want people to be buying like the light version to try it out, or like the free version to try it out. But yeah, I suppose that surprised me too, is that people just jump head first into the deep end.
Right. So I'm gonna send you guys with a critical question.
Okay.
That I know that, you know, I've gotten a lot and had to answer many times, and I think that answer probably continues to evolve. And that is, you know, there's always this concern that we hear a lot from people, that, valid or not, the concern is there, of with all of these products coming about that obviously we all here have created, we're part of, you know, that it's commercializing Blender. It's making Blender less accessible to everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, Blender is all about making it's the freedom to create anything that you want, the freedom to have access to these tools, et cetera, et cetera. It's the freedom to create. And the concern that gets expressed a lot is, well, if we have suddenly a financial interest with products, mm-hmm. that a lot of those features that people are going to need and want become paywalled. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we wouldn't exist, like there's just two options. Like either people are willing to pay to tens of thousands of very hard work, like a couple of bucks, and then maybe, ideally, they would make money because they're probably professionals. Then for the hobbyists, we're trying to offer the free products. So, like, that's actually, it's useful in itself. Like, it's got the full functionality of the add-ons. We actually don't strip anything from the add-ons. Like, no features are stripped. It's everything is there.
It's content.
Yeah, it's just about the assets.
Yeah.
Like, the assets are royalty-free. We'll see about CC0 sometime in the future,
right.
But right now we just don't really have these questions solved.
Well, and I think for each of you guys, and then I want to hear your answer, Richard. You know, most of your products are ultimately, they're asset based. They're not functionality.
No.
Like, yeah, you guys do a lot of work to make those assets easier to bring into Blender, to populate a scene, to, you know, to work with those assets. But ultimately, they're assets. Yeah. The same tools that you guys use to create those assets is Blender. It's available to anyone and everyone.
So, yeah, because I know there's a bit of a mentality of your paywall and features or functions, but at the end of the day, essentially what most of everyone's assets do is just streamline a workflow. Yeah. You're not being stopped from doing that thing. We're just making sure that thing that would maybe take 5-10 hours now only takes 1 hour.
Right.
So you can still do it. You can still use the functionality. Blender, like Ton said, is always going to be free. Yeah. So it's never going to be paywalled.
And at least it's done by human eye.
Yeah.
Not AI.
Yeah.
It's like HI. Because it really, for me, I remembered the talks earlier today about AI, and it was also by the assistant, that's saving you lots of hours on manual work. So we're like the assistant. We're doing hundreds and hundreds of assets, and the features that go with them, and it in the end, definitely. That's why the products are bought, because time is money. So people want to save time. Therefore, they can pay a bit, to support the cost.
I still feel like there might be a different model. Like this, ideally, we would figure out
closer to the mic.
We would figure out some way where, for example, hobbyists pay less money and they get the same amount of assets, but we somehow need to get the revenue to support the products.
Right.
But how do we make this work? Like, we're not really sure. And this is something that even big corporations, they really struggle with this. So
some don't care really. Some struggle. It's visible.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it's I understand it, because if you see it just from the outside looking in, it's all of these cool things I have to buy,
right?
Which is a paywall. But when you break it down to the core elements, like making trees, all we've done is the same thing that you could do. We've just made the tree, we've made the leaves, we've put the textures on, and then we've packaged it and put it into a thing. There's nothing stopping a user going out and doing that.
Right.
If your skill sets don't enable you to do that, then you might. It's more fiscally appropriate to go and purchase for that. I don't do accounts because I'm not an accountant. We hire an accountant to do it. So it's not paywalled for an accountant. I just can't do that skill. So it makes sense. If you can't make trees, you would buy trees.
I think even with the trees, if you're really skilled at creating trees, you're probably your hourly rate, depending on where you're situated, is probably going to be such that it'll like the cost of the product will probably be like the amount of money you spend in hours, even if you're like really fast and efficient. So and we're actually giving like hundreds of assets with lots of features, like animated trees, the scattering system, and so on. I'm using Botanic as a for
absolutely.
example, like it could be anything, right?
Certainly.
So
All right. Changing tact again. A subject that I personally have a lot of experience with is, and mostly in a negative way, is burnout. You guys now have loyal audiences that have paid you good money, and that you now have a commitment to continue to support, to provide for, not necessarily provide for, but to ideally provide updates, to keep them happy, et cetera, et cetera. And even if, you could, of course, say, hey, this is the thing, we're going to stop working on it, take it as is, and if it's valuable, great. I know that from the work that you guys are all doing, that that's not the case for most of these. I know that you've retired some products, as is normal, but how do you balance then, now that you have this large audience for each side, for both your companies, you have this large audience, and you now have a burden in a way. And it's, for anybody listening, I'm not suggesting at all that customers are a burden. No. Customers are a luxury. It's wonderful to have that audience, to have that support.
Like an obligation.
But you want to do right by your customers, and that ultimately results typically for a lot of us in a lot of work. And we're all passionate, and typically that means we work too much.
Yes.
How has that experience been for you all as, you're several years into your companies, you're doing great work, you're getting noticed, you've got good customer bases. That burden doesn't get easier.
No. It
doesn't.
It's a tough one. I think depending on, so for me, for example, when I was younger, obviously a couple of years ago, I could handle the late nights and working 7 days a week and, and it kind of goes back to like when people say, how do you value the product? How can you expect us to pay? It's like, I was working 7 days a week. I was doing like 15, 16 hours a day. Yeah. I'm doing that for like a year. It tires you out. And you can do that for a little bit, but then...
And it doesn't matter how much you enjoy it. You can do it for a while.
Yeah.
But there's a finite limit.
And then as that sort of initial burst of I'm going to do everything that I can get you your users and your community, your priorities then have to shift, and you have to say, okay, I've give this to people now. I have to stand by my word. Like I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and that then is a different type of burnout. That one's less physical and more mental, because you're constantly in this sort of mental gymnasts, and how do I make sure that I'm keeping everyone happy, and how do I not upset people? And it always boils down to like, how terrible is someone going to be upset by something that I can't do? And like, how much benefit is it going to be if I can do this in a different way? So it relies on a lot of mental gymnastics, and that's the burnout that we're at now.
Yeah.
Like for me, the finite limit of this, like, because I was also working long hours. Actually, like before Polygonic was founded, I had the job, but I was also working like evenings and weekends. But then I also had the job, and I really needed to do the job right. I didn't want to like scheme like end earlier and so on. I really wanted to do the job. I also had, so that was tough. And then I don't think I was working like 16 or 15 to 16 hours a day for 7 days in a week for like a year. I think it was more like 12 to 13 hours, because I also needed some time to play StarCraft and Heroes of Might and Magic. Actually, GTA 5, I finally got around to play GTA 5 after 3 years after it came out. But later I found the finite limit, and that was my new girlfriend. She wouldn't allow me today. But I'm actually grateful, because I tried the crunch again this last month. It's when tough. We were releasing Materialic 5. We wanted to make it before the Blender conference, so that we were able to actually show people, talk about it, and just we also really needed to put the date on it, because it was in development for like a year and a half. I don't know, like planning, design, and just scrapping different designs and then finally deciding and then doing all the work and consistent work and so much optimization, but also like actual work, like trying to set the materials correctly, inventing new ways how to map textures and so on. So I wouldn't really want to do it again. I think it was last week. I was actually so done, like so burned out even that I couldn't do really simple jobs on computer like that I'm usually able to do. I was like, no, it's not. It doesn't work. Like my eyes I was constantly losing focus, and just it was like, it's gone. Like, what am I going to do? And then I was like, yeah, man, you're just tired.
Time to walk away.
Just go and have a bit of rest.
Time to take a break.
And then like then afterwards it improved. I had some rest. So that's I'm grateful I don't have to crunch anymore. But I can't really say I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Like going for so long, being so obsessed with something, just trying to make it right. It's just it's an interesting feeling, and it's something I would actually like to. If there are any new creators out there who would like to make a living on Blender Market or anywhere actually else, the important thing at first is to just know what's important for the users overall, what could be good, what's missing from the market. That's a hard part now because it's much more mature. And then just go at it. And as Greg was saying, like we're mentioning him so much now, like he said, like it's like it's the sweetest when you fail 9 times and then you succeed. And I think that really rings true when it comes to this. And it's important to actually have the crunches. I think I'm sure some people created companies working like 8 hours, maybe less, but then it takes longer. And I think you really need a couple of months at least of like total focus and really trying to get stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, having that total focus, having those opportunities to fail, and I very intentionally use the word opportunities because failing, like it helps you refine what you do and why you do it and what matters. I know burnout wise, like that's why I don't do tutorials anymore. We started CG Cookie completely by accident. Not completely by accident, but we never set out to do a business around Blender. But like I was just doing tutorials day in, day out, and I loved it. It was so fun. I'm hundreds and hundreds of tutorials, and I did too many for too long for too many hours, and now it's weird to actually even to run 2 Blender businesses, to be at Blender Conference and realize I haven't personally used Blender in like over a year, maybe longer. And that
because then you came out and you were like, oh my God, this is all so realistic.
Ultimately is I hit about 5 years ago, I hit major burnout to the point that like I had no idea what I was going to do. Luckily, that was around the same time that
Polygonic
Blender Market was starting. Exactly. That's why you guys were starting. Come on, you saved me. But no, I basically moved my focus to Blender Market. Yeah, obviously it's still Blender. It's still business. But ultimately, my work today is not in Blender. And that's weird. It literally took me like 5 years to come to terms with that because my entire professional identity this whole time has been wrapped around Blender. Yeah. And I mean, it still is. Yeah, obviously it still is.
I think I have had like half a year without using Blender at all. Like since I started when I was 13, I used it a lot. But then when I was studying architecture, I had so much stuff going on that I just didn't use it for half a year, maybe even more at all. And then I realized, I was like, oh, I didn't open Blender for like 6 months. And it was just a set of,
this is new. It's all new.
Yeah.
It happened, and it took me 6 months to realize.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, because you get to that point where you're working so hard, you're working so long, that then whenever you finally hit that threshold of burnout, like you don't really realize it when it happens. You look back and you realize when it happened, but you don't typically realize it in the moment.
No,
and that's tough. Particularly if you're burning the candle at both ends and trying to build a business for yourself while doing a day job, or trying to whatever it is. If you're trying to perfect something, it's very easy to work too hard, too fast for too long, and it's tough.
Yeah, but it's also important, I think.
It is.
Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just need some sanity.
Yes.
Every once in a while.
Like I think crunching is fine for a limited amount of time, but you need to be very careful because, as you said, like if you burn out, like I've had burnouts where it took maybe like a month to recover, and I really, like I still was doing my job, but I was so slow and I hated every second of it. And you need to be very careful. I also think that this can happen even if you work limited hours.
Yeah.
If you just do the same thing, you start like hating it over time, I think.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily need to be like a crunch or anything like that. It can just be the repetition of the same thing that can burn you out a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's important to make sure that, like you're always giving yourself the chance to constantly reinvent what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously reinvent yourself in a way, but to keep changing the things that you're doing and make sure that you're protecting yourself in that way. Even if you don't realize it, like constantly changing the thing that you do,
You have to
shifting
grow.
over time. It helps.
Yeah, you have to
and
grow.
It's healthy.
It is.
But it's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's also funny now that I think of it. I think like over like the entire length of our lives, I think Martin actually opened more Blender files than I, because he created the scripts that opened them like hundreds.
That's cheating though, right? Because I would run one command and open 2,000 of them.
I think that's cheating. Yeah.
Cheating in the best way.
Yeah.
Was it Jason Van Gumster? He wrote Blender for Dummies and a couple of other books. Always likes to if you're not cheating, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
All right. There's lots of ways to cheat, but at the end of the day, if you can find a way to do it more quickly and more productively, and you can automate things that you otherwise would just find monotonous, that just frees up your time to focus on the things that are really interesting that you can.
So
which is more fun.
AI is like cheating a bit.
Yeah, totally.
But like that circles back to the whole like why we create the tools. Like we do these tools so that people get to do exactly that. Like they get to focus on the things that they like, and they have to meticulously model for hours or write their own scripts or try and automate these things. Like that's kind of the point of what we do in the end.
Totally. To automate something that otherwise is monotonous. That, I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday about rotoscoping and some of the AI work that's going into being able to automate more of that. And like nobody is going to truly miss manual rotoscoping when that day comes. Yeah. Like there's a reason that it's the junior artists that always get the rotoscoping jobs because they're cheaper and they're young and ignorant enough that they don't mind. It's an opportunity. And let's be honest, it is an opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't think they're like ignorant enough. I think it's
and to be sure, I mean ignorant from just lack of experience, not
but
a
just some of this like grunt work.
Yep.
It's actually a good learning experience because when you really like get to do it a lot, you sort of like understand like, oh, so this is like how it goes. Like I always have to do this. This is always the problem.
Yep.
This is always fine. I don't really have to do this. And then you find out like, oh, what if I do it this way? So like you can actually be creative about almost like any kind of work.
Another point about this is, so at Polygonic, we try to automate everything we can. Like if there's something repeated, we want to automate it as soon as possible. But we've had pushback internally from the team because like people find it relaxing to do some of these manual tasks. And we just take them away and they're like, no, I missed this so much. I want to move objects around.
I remember like when I was actively doing Blender work, the thing that I loved the most was modeling, topology.
Yeah.
And retopology specifically. And like, even though, I helped design a tool that sped up a lot of that.
Retopology flow.
I love the monotony of it because it was, it was kind of a peaceful thing that I could do that I wasn't worried about the final result. I wasn't worried about trying to create a compelling model. That compelling model already existed. And I got to just kind of relax, put on some music and just go at it for hours. And then, of course, you start to appreciate your time a little bit more, particularly when you get in a relationship.
Funny thing, when we were very young with Martin, we were clicking what's the jewelry photos or like scans of jewelries for our mother actually, because she had a business regarding that, and we were like selecting the paths in Photoshop. I think it was like CS1 or like a very old version. And today you can just do like select subject.
I know.
And it's basically done. And even like today, I would be like, So what that is that it has a shadow? I think the shadow is fine. We can keep the shadow. The shadow is informative. We don't really have to cut it off.
Well, and, you know, that's really no different than like a lot of what you guys are doing, where it doesn't automate the whole process. It doesn't, you know, make everything perfect, but it gets you 95%, 98% of the way there.
Yeah.
And then your skills as an artist is where you then refine that last little bit, you know, whether, you know, regardless of whether we're talking rotoscoping or, you know, masking out a subject in a photo, whatever it is, it's, you know, all of these tools still rely on an artist being exceptional at what they do.
Yeah.
I think it's always going to be interesting to model stuff. Like just like Willem said in the morning, like he just likes to start Blender with the tablet and just do some sculpting, and that is just fun, you know, and that's always going to stay. It's just that probably AI is going to change some things around a bit, but hopefully it's going to be for the better.
I suspect so.
Yeah, and but the products we do, they're like HI, and that's why we do like. For example, we do the material library, Materialic. We do traffic, which is like traffic, like cars, planes, ships, boats, bicycles. Then we do botanic. It's like nature in general, palms, shrubs, trees, deciduous, conifers, and all sorts of stuff like this. And then aquatic, which is like animated water, like pre-animated, and render set, which is the render manager add-on, which just saves so much time. And it's that's actually something I would like to note. I'm so surprised that like more like that it doesn't have more users, you know.
Yeah.
Because for me personally, it's just so helpful. Like it saves the renders automatically. You can render a lot of stuff over the weekend. It automatically like changes the render context and renders the next one. For example, with animations, you don't have to be at the computer to start the animation. And
sometimes the best tools have no visual appeal, though, and that is
they don't.
challenging.
And they're so mind-numbingly hard to explain. But we, as you said, like the customer is always right.
Yeah.
We should just do a better job of explaining that.
It's kind of like I think that's kind of the point of everything is like you were saying, you don't want to take away any creative control. You want to give them more of that by removing the things that they don't want to do, like the time wasters of whatever. Some people like to model, some people don't. Some people like to scatter with using geometry nodes, some people don't.
Continue. Sorry, I just had a thought that I wanted to
go
add
on.
Thoughts? Well, so one of the things that we didn't talk about earlier was, when we were talking about where products fit within Blender and creating paywalls and things like that. There's, one of the great things about products in this case, and this applies to free products too, like this, absolutely, but to things that don't exist by default in Blender, is Blender for the most part has to be careful to be generalized. It's for everybody, it's for every workflow, it's for every studio, every person, etc. Whereas when you create something that is your own, even if that is also then being created for your audience, you can be very opinionated about how that thing works. And you can define your own workflow that everybody else may say, you know what, your workflow it's bullshit. I don't like it. But that's okay, because it's yours. It's your product, your workflow. And if other people like that workflow, great.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, obviously on the Blender side, we have to keep it generalized. It leaves a lot of opportunity for people to develop their own things. Like actually, a classic example I think on Blender Market that most people will be familiar with is HardOps. HardOps is an incredible modeling system, but it is incredibly opinionated, and it's a very unique workflow that is really, really cool. But you put that in the default workflow, and it's going to be really wonky.
I think like you have to stay generalized, but also like to allow customization. That's probably the best. Which is actually what Blender does. Yeah, Blender tries to to stay generalized, but you can customize it so much. Like, it's incredible.
That's the whole point. Yeah,
and it's going to be even better with what Ton was saying at the keynote.
Blender apps,
like the Blender apps and so on.
Yeah, and the extensions and things.
But the starting point is the same for everybody, and that's the key.
And that's the whole point. It's like you don't go out and buy. Everyone goes and buys the exact same color car. They go and buy the exact same model car, and they go and buy the exact same clothes and the exact same house. Like, that's the point. Like, these products that are there appeal to certain people. They don't appeal to everyone. And we're not trying to get everyone to be appealed by them, and that's kind of the point. Like, if you don't like them and you want to work in a completely free environment, that's entirely up to you. That's not wrong, but it's also not wrong for someone to want to purchase a tool to help them with their workflow.
Well, it's also a good example of why, like,
Freedom
hey,
of choice.
You know,
that's exactly.
we can have multiple products that do fundamentally the same thing. You know, there are many successful products on Blender Market that all do fundamentally the same
Similar
thing,
stuff,
but they all do it a little differently with their own style, their own flair, etc. And those things will appeal to different people in different ways, and that's important. Well, so I know we are starting to run a little long on time. It's 5:10 now, so we can go ahead and wrap up. But I wanted to kind of leave the floor open. Any last thoughts that you wanted to add? Any comments before we
I wanted to
sign
ask
off?
about the chat if someone has some questions.
Yeah, there's been a couple of questions. Let me go up really quick. Where was
Only the nice ones.
it? Only the nice. Oh, there it is. Well, so like one Wave Morpher asked, what is coming up next with Blender? It seems so capable already. I think this question probably, because we are on the official Blender channel, is probably about Blender in general, but there is a lot of cool stuff coming up. Given that we're talking to you guys right now, why don't you take the opportunity, what is coming up? What's next for True VFX? What's next for Polygonic? Obviously there's probably a lot of the same, it's the support, it's maintenance, new versions, but what's the thing that gets you excited that you hope to work on soon?
Yeah, we'd like to extend our product to Materialic more, because we've spent a lot of time doing the complete rehaul of everything and improving it a lot. And we've got many textures stockpiled, actually, and just ready to be processed, and just create materials from them, which, like, this process we've sort of optimized. So we'd like to create a big, a really big library where ideally it would be I can have everything here. That's fine. The only thing you would be missing are something really niche. And our plan is also to have it incredibly well, meticulously organized and classified and categorized, so that you can just find what you're looking for rather intuitively, easily, because someone actually took the time to organize all the materials almost that you can find in the world, all the types of wood, all the types of stone, concrete, and then we've put them in subcategories and so on. So that's something we'll be doing a lot now. Regarding something else, we wanted to redo our trees in Botanic.
That's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun, but it's also very open-ended right now. The work hasn't really started.
Sure.
One thing I'm really excited about is people keep asking us. So I have Traffic, Botanic, Materialic, and it all creates a new panel, and it's all different. And one of our big plans is to unify this. And especially split up all the add-on code from all the assets, so we can ship updates much quicker in the main add-on and give more functionality, but people don't have to download all the gigabytes of assets.
Right.
So that's what I'm really excited about.
Is that going to use the new asset browser, or how are you doing that?
So we also support the new asset browser, but we will ship our own panel with the operators that we need, but they're going to be shared, and they're just going to figure out if you're operating on a Botanic asset or Traffic asset, they need to do something slightly different. But because we have control over custom properties and the assets, we can figure it out from the code. But we want to unify all the things into one panel, make it simpler, and
big project. So it sounds like a big project.
yeah, it is. Materialic 5 is actually the first release that's using this, but we're gonna work more on this.
Nice, that's awesome. Richard?
One thing we're looking forward to is the development of Eevee, because we get a lot of people saying to us why don't you support Eevee? Why don't you? And we're no, we should. But there are genuine reasons why we don't. But with what's coming with Eevee, we're looking forward to it because we believe it'll open up the doors for us to maintain the quality, but improve the performance.
The displacement.
Yeah, these things, the displacement, the way they're handling instances, the way they're going to cache shader nodes and things like that, just to make it more performant, and that will really benefit the end user at the end of the day.
Yeah. With Eevee specifically, we've got the same problems.
Yeah,
and it's always we always try to explain to the users that Eevee It's not like a video game engine.
No, it's not Unreal
Like
Engine.
Yeah.
it's like a sort of, it could be like a sort of real time renderer. Like it's usually it's real time. Sometimes it's not going to be real time,
No.
but it's still going to be blazing fast compared to Cycles, unless you're rendering something that's really memory intensive, where Cycles actually just shines. Like
Yeah,
it
it
can
takes
render
it.
billions and billions of triangles, and now with the persistent data, that's just improves this so much more. So you can actually, it surprised me, sometimes you can almost render an animation with Cycles like instantly. Like if you set the samples right, and you've got a good GPU, of course,
You get that denoiser on.
and the denoiser, you change it from the Intel one to the optics, which can work in many cases just as well. You can render an animation like really fast. Like one frame can be under 1 second actually.
Wow.
You can almost see the animation go.
Yeah, filming, yeah. So I think True Terrain 5 will, provided that we can get on Eevee, True Terrain 5 will be a lot nicer for people.
Nice. Well, I suspect that people will quite enjoy that. Well, hey, thank you guys so much.
Thank you
pleasure.
very
Richard,
much.
Martin, Adam, Zach, somewhere, wherever
He's doing a talk, yeah.
You know, just as a quick reminder for everybody that is listening or watching the stream, we had myself, I'm Jonathan Williamson with CG Cookie and Blender Market. I had Richard Traynor and his partner Zach Easton of True VFX, and then Martin Preisler and Adam Preisler of Polygonic. They are both successful creators and businesses now with full teams selling on Blender Market and other platforms and doing really, really, really compelling work. So thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Pablo, thank you so much for setting this all up for the podcast.
Yeah.
You know, Blender Conference is an absolute blast, and it's great to see everybody. And this was kind of fun to take over the podcast for a little bit.
And I think it applies to everyone here as we're sitting here, that like for anyone at the conference, just feel free to come and chat with us.
Yeah.
Like
Tap me on the shoulder.
completely open to
Say hello.
It's one of the best parts about Blender conferences.
Yes,
Suddenly,
it
you know,
is,
so many of us are all in the same room, and this year is bigger than ever. So it's pretty awesome.
It's twice, right?
2 or 3 times. I think
It was
typically it's capped out
300,
at 200 or 300, I think, and I know that they sold 600 plus
600.
tickets.
You can
So-
see it in some of the talks that actually it's really hard to
get
a
in.
seat.
Nobody,
Yeah.
you can't actually put everybody in every talk at once. There's enough space that you have to divvy it up, and it's awesome.
But what I really like are the stairs actually. Like they make it interesting.
Giving me a workout. These legs.
the stairs are awesome. Yeah, this venue is it's really incredible. I mean, like I know you probably
The
can't
building
see
is
it in the video,
amazing.
but like
And this
we're
actually-
literally like sitting in a little cupola on top of the building, and I don't know how
cool.
old this building is, but it's awesome. And I think
Very cool.
it's like 9 flights of stairs to get up here, and like a little ship ladder curling up through the cupola. It's
We also
this is the
went to
coolest
the roof.
venue I've ever been in. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it, and we'll sign off from there.
Yep.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.